You're young, you're growing up, you like science. Did you have scientists pinned up on your wall? And if so, who were they?
No, I had Katie Manning pinned up on my wall.
Yay! Does Katie Manning know this?
She does now.
He is a physics teacher, an accomplished actor in his own right, and author of a fantastic biography of his father, the second Doctor Patrick Troughton. So, Long Island Who, please welcome Michael Troughton. So I do feel like introducing you that way, it does sound like we're about to start a cage fight.
I like the physics teacher bit. That's good.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's go ahead and check that mic, make sure everything's working.
Hello. Come in. What's up? Hello.
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 Can we hear the back?
Actually, to start off with, I'd like to do an I'd like to do an impression of Woody Woodpecker on a very scratchy 78 record. If you could hold the mic. Here we go. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to do a cat being sick. Thank you very much. A good way to start.
I don't think we can actually follow that, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, and yeah, we'll see you
This
later.
episode brought to you by Animal Planet.
That woodpecker is brilliant. How long did it take you to start that? Let's actually talk about that creative process.
Yeah, the creative process happened when I was about 8, I think. I learned to, you blow through you do the noise through there. It annoyed my sister, so immediately I decided that would be a really good idea, and I started doing all these sound effects. And in fact, it came in quite handy, because when I did radio, when I got a bit older, 1920, I met this amazing guy called Percy Edwards, who worked for the BBC, specifically doing sound effects. And he could do anything. He could do a dog, and he'd say, "What kind of dog would you like?" And it would be an Alsatian, and you know exactly what it was. And in fact, he used to cover, when they did wildlife programs, he used to cover the sounds of wildlife that they hadn't caught. He was that good. He was an extraordinary man.
That's amazing. So that instilled in you the desire to become an animal documentary sound effects master.
Absolutely, yeah. And it comes in handy because I work at home in a recording studio. And, often when I do children's audiobooks, I put in some of those wonderful sort of sound effects that I learned how to do from Percy, which is excellent.
You then have to explain to children today who Woody Woodpecker is.
Yes, I sort of changed.
Raise your hand, audience, if you know who Woody Woodpecker is. That's not everybody. So I do want to point that out.
Have to be someone like Peppa Pig or something like that. But it would work because it'd be a CD, wouldn't it, or download now? No, it would work. Yeah, very cool.
Well, let's talk about your acting career for a little
Right.
bit. Was there a time you wanted to be something other than an actor?
Yes, very much so. Basically, when I was about 12, I think, around about the time my dad became Doctor Who, actually, I decided I want to be a scientist, and my bedroom was like a laboratory. I had Dad put up a bench, and I had microscopes and all sorts of things. And sort of from probably 12 all the way through to about 17, I was really on the scientific side. It was quite lucky because I feel, that my scientific side gave birth then. When I went to the Palladium and did a summer job with Tommy Cooper, I don't know whether everybody knows Tommy Cooper, but he was doing this wonderful show called Summertime, and I actually managed to get a job as a backstage hand. And that's what changed me from science to wanting to be on stage, because I just got the bug. Working at the London Palladium, I mean, it was just wonderful. So that was the scientific side was put on the burner, really. I did the acting, and then I decided I really would like to become a teacher and, qualify as a science teacher. So I took 7 years out, and then I became a qualified teacher and started teaching physics, of all things, which is completely opposite to, being a creative, really. But I think it was really important for me to do that, because I had that craving when I was so much younger, and I felt, I needed to fulfill it. In fact, at the moment, I'm doing a university degree in astrophysics, which is really cool.
You are, there's never a time where you can't learn something. I do have to ask this. You're young, you're growing up, you like science. Did you have scientists pinned up on your wall, and if so, who were they?
No, I had Katie Manning pinned up on my wall.
Does Katie Manning know this?
She does now. I did a signing way back in London, and it was the first time I'd met her. And I told her this, and she went, how lovely, and snuggle. But no, I was really in love with her when I was younger. Yeah, a teenager. Yeah.
So you had a pretty extensive acting career for a while, and you were actually able to act with your father on a show called Angels.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that was quite interesting, actually, because, you never know what the process is that he used. I had a way of acting, and it was based really on his advice, because going back, I didn't actually go to a drama school. I learnt at a repertory theatre, really. Well, it wasn't really a repertory theatre. It was a professional theatre in the middle of London, but it was children's audiences. And you certainly know if you're holding a children's audience, because they tell you. And there were two types of audience as well. There were the really sort of gritty children from the East End, and you knew when they were in, because they basically talk all the way through it, and they throw paper jets at you and things like that. So you really did have to hold their attention. But that was the way I learned. But going back to Dad, it was interesting because we got together, and I hadn't really ever seen him working, rehearsing, and the process he used. And I was quite surprised at how 100% he gave all the time. A lot of actors, when they're rehearsing, they'll sort of, they'll mark it through, and they'll give sort of 50%. Until the performance, when they actually do it, and then they give 100. Dad wasn't like that at all. He, right from the off, once he'd set it in rehearsal, every time he would do a run, it would be 100% the performance. And I just take my hat off to him, because the energy, the nervous energy he required to do that was astounding, really was. And in a way, after I'd worked with him, I sort of followed that. I began to realize that actually you do have to capture it all the time. You can't sit back, and do, the easy way, and try and do it on the night. Especially in things like comedy, you have to set it so solidly. The best comedy looks as if A, it's real, and B, that there's some form of ad-libbing. But there isn't. It's so well rehearsed, it looks like that. There's a couple of very funny comedians in the UK called Morecambe and Wise, and they always looked as if they were ad-libbing, making up on the spur of the moment. It was rehearsed to the last inch. But it was so clever that it looked as if it was ad-lib. Yeah.
I read a lot about that in your biography. I read your biography last week. It's great. He wrote a biography about his father, Patrick Troughton. It's on sale at his table. You should get it. It's a great book.
Thank you very much.
I noticed as I was reading the book, there was a lot of research that you had to do for this. How hard was it to put all of that together?
All I can say, it was a voyage of discovery. If you've read the book, there's two stories, really. It's his private life and also his professional. On the professional side, it wasn't as difficult. There was a lot of information out there. I did do an awful lot of research. It took me about a year, which was quite quick, really. I was able to look back at his contracts. I was able to look into the photographs he had, all that kind of stuff. And what was amazing, the big thing I realized was how much he had done. Extraordinary amount of work he did. I always remember him saying, I've been out of work for 3 days, what am I going to do? And I was thinking, well, lucky you, I've been out of work for 6 months, And he was always in work because he was so good. That was the key to it. He had this ability to be able to, in the old days, you could knock on directors' doors. And that's what he did. He was so proactive. And also he was a father who, was very lucky at that point in the history of television because he came in right at the moment that television was being created, in the UK anyway, in the 1950s. He was very lucky in that respect. And he took to it straight away. A lot of other actors couldn't do it. They were so stage-orientated, they couldn't change. But he was very lucky. And that's, I think, why he did so much. Because the directors in those times, they needed people that were very dependable. And he was so dependable because he was so confident in the medium. And so he was in everything. He was, you look at some of the old black and white stuff he did in the 50s, and Robin Hood, he'd be playing 2 different characters in the same episode, which was extraordinary, yeah. And nobody knew. That was the thing. Also, the other thing about Dad was that, he wasn't very recognizable because he was always disguised as someone else or creating this amazing character. So, yeah.
And you were able to visit the Doctor Who set when your dad was on 3 different times?
Yeah, 3 different times. That was wonderful. The one I really remember, because it's a long time ago, the one I really remember is The Web of Fear. And the most wonderful set, the underground set, was just stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I remember, the Yeti, and they had those, what are they called, those little things that ran around on the ground, radio-controlled things. What were they called? That's it, Cyber, yeah, they had those. Might have not been on that one. I think it was on that one. And they were forever breaking down. And in the end, the props guys were pulling around with fishing wire. It didn't work. And I remember also the Yeti. Wow, I mean, that was extraordinary. Those guys were, I take my hat off to them, because they were in they were made of cane. They were like sort of cane sort of shape. But then it was covered with the thickest layer of fur. And in rehearsals, they obviously, did it with their tops off, as it were. And they'd be walking around with these sort of really weird-looking... They look like skirts from sort of way back in the 1800s. They were always forever dropping their, the little ball inside their flaps. They'd lean forward and the ball would go boom, boom, and it would roll away, Yeah. What were the other things I remember?
I do have to ask, as you're pulling this thought. So you said you visited the set possibly, during the Web of Fear. You don't happen to have had any home videos of, say, potentially the 3rd episode that they could use to fill those gaps, do you?
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that redone, yeah, because my wife and I went to the first showing of that in London, and it was just amazing what they'd been able to do with the old. Because, I mean, in those days, transferring it onto, from video onto film. They basically just filmed the video TV set, didn't they? I mean, that was essentially what they did. And the quality they managed to get on those reproductions that they did, it was just incredible. Absolutely amazing. I'm just trying to think of the other things I remember. That's right, I remember the PA taking me across the rails to have a look at the tunnel, and him saying, "Oh, watch out, don't touch the live one," and me totally believing it. I do remember that, yeah. And who was the guy who played the professor? Forgotten his name. Someone will know. That's it, Jack Watling. Yeah, Jack Watling was wonderful. He when Dad was doing his stuff, he looked after me. But yeah, good times. Yeah, the only other time was, there were two. Actually, there were three. The second time, I think, was a Dalek one, where I got the chance to play in the Dalek. And I actually did. I was in a rehearsal. They let me do a move across the camera in a rehearsal, which was just brilliant. But in those days, it was like a piece of old tuba one and a horrible sort of tractor seat, and you rolled along like that, and you had like indicator winkers that you pulled when he spoke, which was quite interesting. And you could hardly see anything. No wonder those things were bumping into all sorts of set. Yeah.
I have to ask, it's such an interesting idea, and it's a totally alien experience. As someone who grew up with someone in the family who was an actor, did you watch those episodes on television?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Did knowing what happens behind the scenes break that illusion for you? I mean, like, getting inside a Dalek must have been an amazing experience, but also did it, like, diminish it at all?
Well, yeah, ruin it. Ruin the disbelief, as it were. The wall. No, it didn't when I was a kid.
Sure.
But now I find it quite difficult to watch stuff, and not think, oh, that's a good angle, or, oh, yeah, where are they, or, oh, that's CGI, or whatever. It is difficult when you worked in the business not to divorce yourself. And I'll tell you something, it's only a really brilliant film that allows me to escape that. And so you really do know when a film is good, because I'm not thinking of the angles, or I'm not, not thinking, oh, that actor, was that the right line? No, he looks as if he forgot that line, None of that goes on. You just get totally absorbed into it. Yeah.
Is there any particular kind of genre that does that to you automatically? Like if you're watching something, go like, science fiction's going to do this, or, a big drama, or...
It's not necessarily the genre, no, although I love science fiction. I mean, I'm a great fan of science fiction. Star Trek, I mean, lovely, and of course Doctor Who. But going back to Doctor Who, watching Dad was absolutely wonderful. I mean, I was 13, and my dad was Doctor Who. I had many more friends at school when and I remember doing a business on, I said, oh, Dad, sign these, can you sign these for me? And I'd take autographs in and go, oh, look, do you want an autograph? Yeah, that'll cost you, a chocolate bar and all that. So it was quite a good little business going on at school, yeah.
The Mill Hill Drama School where your father... he attended there.
That was Mill Hill Public School that he went to, yeah.
Right. It's now the Patrick Troughton Theater.
Yeah, that's right.
You were there recently for a blue plaque presentation with your sister Jo.
Yes. Yeah, Mill Hill School was where he went. He lived in Mill Hill from a child all the way through until he went to America, actually, to Long Island, to a theater. He got he was able to go and be directed by... I can't remember the name of the guy. But anyway, going back, he went to school at Mill Hill, and because of that, the school wanted to name the theatre after him. So it was called the Patrick Troughton Theatre, and we went up for the ceremony. But probably I think it was about 3 weeks ago, we went and we put the official plaque up there. And it was absolutely wonderful. I thought it was just going to be a small event. And so many lovely old actors turned up. And it wasn't just the actors. makeup ladies and prop guys and producers, and all these wonderful people turned up to celebrate Dad. It was quite touching. I was shocked, actually. I really was, at the number of people that turned up. It was a lovely, lovely event.
I have a two-part question. Yeah. The first part, and I'm going to tell you, ask both questions. You can figure out how you want to blend them together. The first is, did you watch episodes of Doctor Who with your father? Did you actually? And then the second part is, can you, or do you watch your own work? Can you watch your own work?
Right. Good. They're really good questions. I don't remember watching with Dad because really he rarely watched himself because he was working on the next episode. I mean, it was a really grueling thing. I mean, he basically had Sunday off if he was lucky and not filming. It was just continuous. It was a bit like doing live TV, really, in those days. But going to the question about, do I like watching myself? No. I really don't. I can just about watch myself on sort of TV every now and again. But when someone films a stage production, I just walk the other way. Because I did it once. I looked at myself, somebody had filmed something on stage when I was doing it live. And I was so appalled at how different it was to how the inside thought it was while I was doing it, which was terrifying. So I never ever did that again. No, I'd never do that.
Well, we watched some of your work.
Oh, thank God for that.
In a Doctor Who episode called Last Christmas. Tell us about that.
Oh, Last Christmas, yeah. I mean, that was quite an emotional experience because, the last time I'd been on a Doctor Who set, it was when I was 12. And when I walked onto the set in, I think it was Bristol, it was extraordinary because I thought it was going to be a huge green box and they were all going, they were going to put everything on afterwards. But no, it was this stunning set that they'd built. Absolutely amazing with working knobs and, TV screens and computers and steam shooting out of stuff, and it was just wonderful. And what amused me most of all was Peter Capaldi, because I knew him quite well, and whenever I'd work with him, he'd always be asking me about what was it like? What was it like on the set? Because he was a complete madman about Doctor Who. I mean, think of think of the actor that you could choose to play Doctor Who, and he was the one, because he just loved it, absolutely loved it. And when we were on set, he'd be constantly, in between shots, he'd be constantly coming out and saying, what was it like on, when you were 12, what was it like being on the Web of Fear set? And, tell me about it. He was like a little child. It was just great, really good.
Can you watch yourself in that one?
Just about, yeah. I mean, what I really like watching is the bit where I get sucked into the... That was great. Do you know, that was a really funny thing, because what they did was they got one of those sex blow-up dolls. You know the ones? And they dressed him up like me.
Just checking for children in the audience. There's a couple.
Whoopsie daisy, I do beg your pardon. But it was like a sort of doll, and they put a wig on, and they do all that, and then I did the first lunge into the television. They then had a string on top of this dummy's head they cut to, and they pulled it through. And I thought, that is going to look appalling. That's just a joke. But when they CGI'd it and put the face on and stuff like that, it looked great. What a great death, being sucked through a monitor.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
Also being replaced by a blow-up doll.
Yeah, because originally I would... Yeah, I feel honoured.
There you
go. Originally the script was slightly different. All the others, they got on the sleigh and they went back to their original locations. I apparently was a lavatory attendant in Harrods. And that was the original script. That was what was written. So I would go back to my location. But in the end, we sort of talked about it and said, wouldn't it be great if, there was some kind of good death? Because I do like a good death. An actor loves a good death. Boy, I got it. It's
So
great.
what you're saying is death is preferable to being a laundry attendant, laboratory attendant in Harrods.
I take that every time.
Yeah, okay. So, it is an amazing episode of television. Speaking of television, you're sitting on the couch, you got 90 minutes to 2 hours to kill. Do you prefer to sit down and watch TV or a movie?
Yeah, good question. I like movies, but I do like a good binge. Do you know what I mean? Recently we've been catching up on stuff. There's so much on television, and somebody will come and say, "Oh, did you see, season 3 of so-and-so?" You say, season 3 of what? And then, of course, you go back and you binge the whole lot. I love doing that. But I do like a good movie. Yeah, movies are probably the ones I like. It depends what it is, though, doesn't it? I mean, the BBC put on great series. I don't think there's a distinction, to be honest. Yeah, I just go for the good quality.
Well, I mean, that seems like the quality of television is such now that sometimes it can equal the quality of films. I mean, a great movie is always a great movie, and a great TV show is always a great TV show. But, sometimes the quality overall, I mean, we got actors who are coming in who used to be movie stars and now are great television stars.
It really has changed, hasn't it? It's huge, the difference. And the money has changed. I mean, I'm not sure, but, the download money and the DVD money is probably, a large part of the profits now, isn't it?
It's a tumultuous time to even answer that question. And so I'm going to actually skip it and do this number, which is whenever we have a guest onto the program, we love to talk about Doctor Who because that is why we are all here. However, we know that Doctor Who is not the end-all and be-all of our guests' fandom, so we do ask for you to bring a television show that is not Doctor Who to discuss. So, Michael Troughton, what television show have you brought for us today?
Blackadder. What a great series. One of the best. Some of the most fantastic characters. I just got to read you a quote from it. I'm sorry.
Please do. While you're prepping that, I'm going to ask the audience. It seems like you have seen Blackadder. Has anybody not seen Blackadder? Okay. Spoilers for Blackadder. It's perfectly fine. Unlike modern television today, it is not a serialized program. It is a comedy series done by Rowan Atkinson. It is a historical looking through a particular individual's family tree. These individual family are not the most upstanding, or the most clever, or the nicest, or most polite. Anyway, the quote, sir.
The quote is this. The path of my life is strewn with cowpats from the devil's own satanic herd. So you got the idea. People who haven't seen it before, you get the idea. Okay.
So I have to ask, when was the first time that you watched Blackadder?
The original series.
Original series?
Yeah. Which, it wasn't in the same style as the rest of them. It was a very different kind of, thing. It was very different. It had Brian Blessed in it, didn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Talking about climbing up Everest all the time, isn't it? It wasn't, I don't think, quite as good as the following. Now, it's interesting because the BBC were really, really good at saying, look, okay, we'll give you another chance to put on season 2. Now, nowadays, that would be it. It would be gone, wouldn't it? But the BBC at that time were really, really good at supporting drama that they sort of instinctively knew could improve. And that, luckily, happened to Blackadder. Because it could have been a stinker. It could have just disappeared down the pan. But it didn't. And we all know what happened afterwards. It was just genius. Absolute genius. And the real thing about really good quality comedy, no matter how over the top it gets, there has to be a pure realism about what, the subject's about and the way it's presented. Or else it's not funny. there's nothing worse than seeing a comedy where the actors think they're being funny. Because it's not funny. It's not funny because, it just doesn't work. It has to be real for you to believe, and then laugh because you empathize with that kind of thing that's going on. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
And each series was very different from each other, yet very similar.
Yeah, I mean, there was a repetitive kind of relationship between, the
Baldric.
Percy. Absolutely, Baldric and the two main characters. And, that's not an unusual thing in a comedy. I mean, I did a series called The New Statesman, and I played the whipping boy in that to Rick Mayall's sort of crazy man. But, I mean, that kind of relationship is fun because, you get that kind of, that terrible kind of sort of degrading of one character by a sadistic, foul, horrible man. It's just genius. The whole idea. My favorite season was the last season, set during, the World War I, because it was so, it was so close to the truth. You had Stephen Fry with this, playing this incredibly pompous man who really didn't give a monkey's about anything apart from make sure he had, a nice meal and a claret. With that wonderful, that wonderful laugh he did. Absolutely brilliant characters. And again, that's what's important about comedy. You've got to have really, really clear, well-defined characters. And in Blackadder, you get that. It's wonderful.
Did you watch the one-off special that they did a few years later with the Time Machine?
No, I didn't. No. There was talk of them going on to doing a series based on roadies around, setting up rock concerts, but it never took off. No, I didn't see the Time one, no.
I've never heard that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I would assume that Baldric would play the electrician of some kind.
Bound to.
And mishaps abound.
Yeah.
This is a program that the scathing wit is sort of the star. There's a lot of physical comedy, but most of it is about sort of knocking someone down to size or showing that people in politics or royalty are idiots. I'm not saying that as a definitive statement. This is what the show showed. But the lines... There are so many memorable lines. One of the things that I think a lot of us fans do is we take a line that we love from a program and we incorporate it in our very own lives, sometimes on a daily basis. I know I certainly have. Is there anything that you say from Blackadder that has kind of saturated into your own life?
Well, I mean, it's the famous one, isn't it? Where Baldric says, I have a cunning plan. I mean, that is life, isn't it? I've always got a cunning plan. Thank God they don't go the way Baldric's do, but that's such a great statement.
Is it a plan so cunning that you could stick a tail on it and call it a weasel?
Yeah, no, I mean he was wonderful in that part. Baldric, he was great. Tony Robinson, marvelous
so
actor,
amazing.
Yeah, I did a radio series with him. And
Please tell us more about that.
It was very strange, actually. It was a planet in the outer solar system where, by chance, I think it was a copy of Noel Coward's play had dropped, and they'd formed it as their Bible, and so all these octopus type of people went round, and they were worshipping, all these different kind of Noel Coward characters, and I think Tony and someone else landed. And comedy ensued. It was quite fun.
That's brilliant. Mm-hmm. I had a small child ask me the other day, what would I do if I won the lottery? Oh, yeah. And I told that small child that I would save up for a giant turnip in the country. It is a reference that, even folks who say they have seen Blackadder are not uproariously laughing. So you try to imagine how that went over with a 5-year-old. I don't care. I was very happy to be able to say that. How about you, Brent? I'm kind of curious. When did you first watch Blackadder?
Actually, when I used to collect the Doctor Who VHSs, I saw Blackadder in there. I found out that Tom Baker is in an episode in season 2.
Yes.
So I searched out the VHS that had Tom Baker in there, of course, watched it, and I thought it was funny. And so I bought one or two more. Years later, the entire thing was on Netflix. Now it's on BritBox, if anybody wants to see it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Well, of course, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean and all of that. So he's just an ingenious creator.
It's interesting. I saw, I sneaked into one of the studios because I was working in an opposite one. And, it's done in front of a live audience like the new Statesman was. And it was very interesting to see him working because he was, you'd imagine him to be, quite relaxed and, in charge. But actually, he was very serious and very focused. And there's a thing you have to decide, really, when you do sitcom and you've got an audience, whether you work towards the cameras or whether you work to the audience. And you get a completely different kind of performance for doing both. And he was definitely a cameraman. He didn't really acknowledge the audience. I don't know whether any of you have been to a live performance, watch a show in a studio. But they have a warm-up man who comes on, to warm up the audience so they're ready to go for the show. He'd be introduced and he'd bow. There wouldn't be any jokes or anything, and he'd just get on with it. And he came alive for the take, and then he'd go back down again and relax. It was extraordinary to watch. It was very interesting. Something I didn't realize, he'd do. I thought it would be all the time, but it wasn't. It was absolutely focused on that particular take. It's quite interesting.
Well, unlike Rowan Atkinson, we are going to focus on the audience, I think, for a moment. And if there's any questions that folks have, remember to keep them short. What's going to happen is, because you don't have mics, you're going to have to ask them, and we'll repeat them into here. And if any, we'll just ask one or two, and then we'll go into our closing. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Easy question. Is the Blackadder Christmas Carol obligatory holiday viewing?
I think a whole of Blackadder is obligatory. Honestly, if you haven't seen it, and you haven't seen it, Pat, have you? You should see it. Yeah, you should definitely see it, yeah. It's the kind of comedy that, is very rare. And it's something everybody should watch, and it's got everything in it. It's got real, it's got humor, it's got slapstick, it's got wonderful language, it's got everything. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's nice to have something as sentimental and beautiful as A Christmas Carol, and then have just a right bastard like Edmund Blackadder thrust into the.
And Nicola
scene.
Bryant is in that episode.
What's that?
Nicola Bryant's in that episode.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Yes, over there. Oh, we got two hats.
How did you find the ending on Blackadder?
I was in tears at the end of that. It was so clever because you'd had this wonderfully funny episode, and the minute that whistle went off, you just knew that things had changed, and that wonderful slow motion and the machine gun noise. It was just so clever. Absolutely brilliant. Really clever. No, very poignant as well. And a sort of, it was lovely because it was sort of saying we understand, we've been taking the mickey out of, this particular period, but we understand the reality of it. Yeah.
I'm going to say something. I will definitely get to your question in just a moment. I'm going to say something that's going to horrify some of you. I saw Blackadder before I saw Doctor Who, like by over a decade. It used to be that it would come on PBS. Blackadder would come on first, Doctor Who would come on after. I would watch Blackadder, and then I would turn it off. I know, I don't deserve to be on this stage, but I am an American and an ignorant one, and I had no idea why that scene was so dramatic. So I had to do my research, and that was one of the first times television educated me outside of, Muppets on a street telling me how to learn my ABCs, which is equally as important, but this is something that I had to look up, and watching it again, horrifying. Even to this day, horrifying. And it's one of those things that I wish I was in a situation where I could use that as a learning material in a classroom setting. It's not physics, but it's
yeah. I mean, I often did use clips from cinema to demonstrate physics, actually. The Italian Job. Do you remember The Italian Job?
Are we talking about the
old one? Yeah, with Michael Caine. For momentum and the action of a lever, I would show them that last thing where the bus was, going back and forth. And I'd say, how are you going to solve that? Because they didn't solve it, did they? And they just cut. So, and they came up with brilliant ideas, like move the gold forward so it counterbalances it, things like that. So, yeah. I mean, I did use a lot of that. Yeah.
Brilliant.
The kids used to love it as well because, I'd go on and I say I'm a teacher and I teach physics, but before I did this, and I also snogged Kate Winslet, which was really great.
I'm sorry, I know you have a question, but we need to talk more about this.
It was it was Enigma, and I was playing a typical sort of slimy, nasty guy who was checking up on her because she was obviously giving information to a friend of hers about the Enigma code, and I caught her at it. And I said, I won't say anything if if there's an arrangement, and she slapped my face. I kissed her first, and then she slapped my face. So, yeah, I have that. I have that lovely memory.
He's got that going for him. I saw another hand in the back. Yes, another gentleman in a hat. No, it's you, but...
Yeah, I mean, not really, no, because, I went down a different kind of path, really. I didn't do as much TV as him, but I was mainly a TV actor, whereas my brother went off and did more stage. We branched away from each other. Not really, no. In fact, I really liked it. There were occasions where, the name did make a difference to get a part. And, so what? You have to deliver the goods at the end of the day. And if you're no good, then you don't get another part. So, yeah, that did help. Also, there are wonderful stories of elderly actresses. I'd go into rehearsal room for a part, and a lovely elderly actress would sort of meander up to me and said, "Hello, Michael. I knew your father very well." And then I go, "Oh, right." Mark it up. Yeah. So yeah, that was very funny. Yeah.
For the podcast listening audience, the question was, do you ever feel like your father overshadowed your career? Just so they know where that story came from.
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's out of the blue. Yeah.
Anybody else have a question? Though I will remind you, you will have to wear a hat if you're asking. No, well, then we'll go back to Blackadder, I think. Cool. Actually,
yeah.
We're kind of starting to wind down. Do you have another one? Because we definitely want to give you time to plug anything that you want to plug.
Absolutely, yeah. Is there anything you'd like to plug for us?
Plug? Big Finish.
Yes.
Yeah. Big Finish, brilliant. Really enjoying playing Dad. Determined not to do an imitation of him. Mix me with his energy. I didn't want to do a cultural. I mean, he's just genius, isn't he? He's brilliant at the Brigadier. But also working with Fraser as well. I first met Fraser when I was 12, and then later in 2012. I met him when I was, 15 something, and and it's brilliant, to be in that relationship again. I think Fraser really enjoys it too, because he does a brilliant impression of Dad as well. But for season 6B, I think they decided, we wanted to be able to be two separate characters. He did, because he was so clever, he'd go from one to the other in the same take, wouldn't he? But I think they wanted two separate people to try and react. And so Nick phoned me up and said, would you do it? And I went, yeah, all right.
I have to ask, have you and Fraser had a Patrick off before and just like see who could say weirder things?
We did one way back in LA. I can't remember who it was, Fraser and I. We were given two scripts. I think it was that lovely poignant moment when he was talking to, can't remember who it was now, the lovely lady that passed away, the assistant. Yeah, she was a lovely lady. And it's that poignant moment where Dad was talking to her about family and stuff like that. I won. Yeah.
I now have this urge to give you random famous quotes from movies, so just to have that has no connection to Doctor Who whatsoever,
Okay.
but we can do that later. We're getting this fantastic symbol telling us that we need to wrap up.
I've seen that. Yeah,
it's
it's
great.
one of
No,
those,
it's
isn't it?
fantastic. So anything other than Big Finish? I know, Brett, you have one more thing you want to say, certainly?
Yeah, I mean, I just do lots of audiobooks on the Amazon site. So at the moment, I've got my home studio, and I'm sort of semi-retired, really. And I'm doing work on audiobooks, awful lot of that. I do, because I'm a physics teacher, I can do all the technical side as well, so I do the whole lot, edit and master and send them back. So, yeah, it's good fun. I don't have to get out of bed either. I have this booth that comes down.
Sorry, you're not wearing a hat. Could we get a hat over here?
No hat.
All right, we'll pass it. There we go. Yeah. Oh, yes. You, sir. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. So, Michael, when you were last at LA, you had the pleasure of interviewing you.
Yeah.
One of the questions I asked you, because you put your dad's biography and I love this. I said, when are you going to write your own autobiography? And you sort of hummed and hard, and I think it's been 5 or 6 years, so where is it?
So the question is, when are you going to write your own biography?
I don't know. I would read it, would they?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Raise your hands if you would read the biography.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Very kind of you. Yeah, well, I mean, I can, yeah, yes. Yeah, it is. It's huge.
Next LI.
Thanks for that.
No problems. We'll just take care of it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's give our guests a round of applause.
Hi, this is Bonnie Gordon, and you're watching Fandom Spotlight. Make sure to like and subscribe before the self-destructs in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just kidding. Have fun and follow your fandom.